Oh, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Psych Bite. We haven't done these in a little bit, so we're really excited to bring this series back. My name is Tori and I'm the program manager here at IBPF. We are very, very excited to be joined by Dr. Andrea Vasilev. She is going to be talking to us about self-stigma. She'll touch a little bit more on specifically what she's going to be talking about today. But first things first, I do want to just touch on our disclaimer for today. Just a little heads up that this information is not meant to take place of a medical professional. So if you do have any specific bipolar related questions, we do recommend talking to a physician. Um, Other than that, we can go ahead and get started. So today, like I said, we are joined by Dr. Andrea Vasilev. She is a psychotherapist based in California, an academic, a speaker, an author, and an award-winning mental health advocate who specializes in bipolar disorder. She has almost 30 years experience living with the condition herself. With her combination of clinical expertise and lived experience, Dr. Vasilev brings a special perspective to both her vast professional and advocacy work. You can learn more about Dr. Vasilev at www.andreavasilev.com and keep up with her on Instagram at best.life.bipolar. Dr. Vasilev is the author of the book Beyond the Bipolar Label, a workbook to overcome self-stigma, break free from shame, and live authentically. So thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited to have you, and I will send it over to you.
Thank you so much for that, Tori. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for that lovely introduction. So today's talk is called Self-Stigma and How to Talk About Your Bipolar. We're going to talk about this topic that is really important to people living with bipolar and one that I think a lot of people struggle with, right? The if and the how to talk about your bipolar and your experiences. What we'll cover today actually comes from my upcoming book, Beyond the Bipolar Label, a workbook to overcome self-stigma, break free from shame, and live authentically. It's based on the Overcoming Self-Stigma in Bipolar Disorder program that I created and is being run all over the world, multiple languages. So many people have taken it, but there was such a demand, I created a self-guided version. So just a little bit about the book first for context. Beyond the Bipolar Label is a self-guided workbook, first of its kind, to tackle the shame, the embarrassment, and the self-stigma that so many people living with bipolar deal with. So many people. The book's available wherever books are sold or from the publisher, New Harbinger. And today we're going to review some of the tools in chapter 6 of the book. Chapter 6 addresses how to talk about your bipolar diagnosis and your experiences. But first, let me back up. I want to talk a little bit about self-stigma, which may be a new phrase to you, but once you learn about it a little bit more, you may realize that it's not actually a new experience. So over the years, a lot of my work has focused on self-stigma in bipolar. I actually did a full-length IBPF webinar on the topic a few years ago, I think. So I encourage you to check that out if you really like a deep dive. Self-stigma is a really big part of why it can feel so difficult to talk about your bipolar. So let's get into it. What is self-stigma? Well, very plainly, self-stigma refers to the negative beliefs we hold about ourselves because we have bipolar, okay? The negative beliefs we hold about ourselves because we have bipolar. And self-stigma stems from stigma itself, right? For example, you may think that either subconsciously or consciously, you may think that people with bipolar are unreliable or dangerous or lazy. Again, you might think this consciously or subconsciously, but that is stigma right there, thinking that because someone has bipolar, they're lazy, they're dangerous, they're unreliable, right? Over time, hearing these stigmas from society and having your own experiences with bipolar, we can come to believe these things about ourselves. So then that becomes, oh, I might be dangerous or lazy or unreliable because I have bipolar, right? That is self-stigma, negative beliefs we hold about ourselves due to having bipolar. Again, this is a super brief overview of self-stigma, probably the quickest I've ever had to give because I want to get to disclosure, but I encourage you to get the book to learn more. We really get into it and how to tackle it. But self-stigma is so common in bipolar, but it's also so quiet, right? It shows up as shame, embarrassment. It's linked to worse depressions, social withdrawal. It's even linked to increased thoughts of suicide in bipolar. So there are just so many negative outcomes to self-stigma. And the worst part is that I think most people don't even realize that they're dealing with it, right? That this is self-stigma. They just think, wow, I feel terrible about this. But this is self-stigma. It has a name and it can be addressed. So if these ideas resonate with you, you find yourself going, oh, wow, that's me. I hadn't realized it, but that's me. I'm totally dealing with that. I strongly encourage you to get the workbook because the skills, the perspectives in the book will meet you where you are and also take you on a journey of healing and growth. So, on to disclosure. So, one thing that happens when you're living with self stigma is that you may be embarrassed to share that you have bipolar or to talk about your experiences with the condition. That is a direct outcome of self stigma. Think about it. Are you embarrassed to share that you have the flu or even something chronic like arthritis? Probably not so much, right? But bipolar, because of the stigma and the self stigma, is something that people often don't want to talk about. And I get it. Don't get me wrong. I've lived with bipolar for almost 30 years now. I get it. You don't always want to talk about it. But I'm going to give you a sneak peek of chapter 6 of Beyond the Bipolar Label, which is called Breaking the Silence, Talking About Your Bipolar. Now, when I wrote this chapter, the purpose of this chapter is not to convince you, this talk is not to convince you to disclose or to talk about your bipolar or to share your experiences with others. The purpose is to give you the tools to make and execute decisions about disclosure in a way that serves and is comfortable for you. So again, not trying to tell you what to do. I'm trying to give you the tools to consider what you want to do and then to figure out how to do it in a way that is best for you. So if you watch this video again, how you experience it today may be different from how you experience it when you're further along your self-stigma healing journey. When we talk about disclosure, there are 4 primary questions. The first, to share or not to share. Pretty simple. The second, with whom to share. The third, what to share. And the fourth, how to share. So again, to share or not to share, with whom to share, what to share, and how to share. So let's start with the first question, the most basic, to share or not to share. Do I want to tell anybody anything? We'll get to the who and the what and the how in a minute, but the first point is, do you want to share? And the first thing I want to say about this is that any disclosure you make, any sharing that you do, should serve you. I want you to remember that you do not owe anyone an explanation of your life or your circumstances. So in making this decision, I want you to be your own first priority, okay? That's number 1. Be sure to identify what you will get from a disclosure before you go through with it. The second point about do I want to share or not to share, is that there are going to be upsides and downsides to any disclosure, right? It may actually help to make a list out. We do this in the workbook to see what the net weight is, the net benefit, right? If it's weighted more heavily with upsides or more heavily with downsides. What are some upsides? Okay, some upsides might include feeling understood, not having to pretend when you're not feeling well, receiving work or school accommodations, or even just busting stigma. It's a lot of great people in our community who share their experiences to bust stigma. We'll get to that at the end. But there are also downsides. Some downsides might include feeling judged, possibly being discriminated against, feeling embarrassed. So these upsides and downsides are going to be different in every situation, right? And only you can weigh them for yourself. So when you're thinking, do I want to share? Do I not want to share? Weigh these upsides, downsides, these pros and cons. There are a number of activities in the workbook that will help you make this decision about whether or not to share in each individual circumstance. Okay, so that's question 1, to share or not to share. Let's say you've decided, I do want to talk about this, right? I want to talk about my diagnosis. I want to share some of my experiences. That brings us to question 2. That question is, with whom to share? So if you've already decided that you do want to share, you do want to disclose, there's a decent chance you have a person in mind already, right? And that's great. That's great. What we want to do is evaluate that person. Two ways that you can evaluate that person to see if they'd be someone beneficial to share with. We talk about this in Beyond the Bipolar label. The two ways are thinking about their personality and considering how close they are to you. So the first one, think about their personality. And second, consider how close they are to you. When thinking about their personality, you might consider how open-minded is this person? Do they show respect for others in general? Do you feel a connection with them? And more. There's many more things. And the second point about with whom to share is how close is this person to you? So in chapter 6, I shared this graphic. Give me a second. I call this, can we see here? I call this circles of trust. So you're in the middle there, and each circle that's just beyond you and just beyond that and just beyond that represents another sort of tier of people and how much you trust them, right? It asks you, this activity asks you to give a trust score to the people in your life, which will help you organize if you want to tell them and how much you want to tell them. Okay, so just to review question 2, which is with whom to share, you want to consider the potential person's personality, right? And how they make you feel. And you want to consider how much you trust them. That brings us to the third question. What to share? This is a big one. And I think one of the ways that people get tripped up is they think, okay, if I'm going to share, I have to say everything. I have to tell them about the traumatic hospitalization. I have to tell them about that embarrassing thing I did while experiencing mania. Newsflash, you don't. So just like bipolar itself, disclosure happens on a spectrum, and not everyone will get, not everyone even deserves the same version of your story, right? So for example, you might choose to share at the very start, okay, I have a mental health condition. That's kind of the most basic thing you can say. You might choose to say, I have bipolar, right? You might choose to share your diagnosis, but not your experiences. You might share some experiences, but not other experiences. And there are a million variations in between. So each disclosure should be tailored to what you want to accomplish. Remember, we said at the start, identify how this disclosure will serve you, and you want what you share to line up with how it's going to serve you. So in this chapter of Beyond the Bipolar label, I guide people to identify what I call highlights and limits. Highlights and limits. The highlights are the things about your diagnosis or your experiences that you definitely want to share. You know that, I want to hit the highlights, that's it. On the flip side, the limits are the things that you'd rather keep private. You know, those are your personal experiences. You don't want to share them. It would be painful. It would be embarrassing. It wouldn't serve you. Whatever the reason, you have identified that as a limit, as a line in the sand. And I think it's very important to identify these highlights and limits in advance so you don't feel pressured or get caught up in the moment, right? Pretend you're sharing with someone and you start telling them and they are actually kind and they show interest and they're validating and you feel safe. You might start telling them more things and then later say, you know, I really wish I hadn't said all of that. I didn't want to share that. So it's important to identify your highlights and your limits in advance and stick to them. Remember, you want to share more, you can always share more later. So again, before any disclosure, I would make a literal list of your personal highlights and limits. So that was question 1, to share or not to share. Question 2, with whom to share. Question 3, what to share. And question 4, how to share. This is probably the easiest, but it's still important to consider. What's most comfortable for you? In person, phone, text, email, carrier pigeon. Like there's so many ways to communicate. Now we know the fact of the matter is once you put any information out there, you cannot control how it spreads. Remember that anything written is more permanent than anything spoken, but also anything written stays accurate because your words can't be unintentionally changed, whereas anything spoken may be subject to a proverbial game of telephone where what you say changes and morphs over time. So there are, again, pros and cons to each method. So those are the four big questions: to share or not to share, with whom to share, what to share, and how to share. Okay, that's quite a lot to consider, isn't it? How can I keep all of this straight in my head? I have excellent news. I created something called, let's pull it up here, the Disclosure Decision Cheat Sheet. Again, can we see? The Disclosure Decision Cheat Sheet. And it takes you through each of these questions and each of the points I just made, from your goals, what you stand to gain, your upsides and downsides, how much weight those upsides and downsides carry, how you can evaluate a particular person, your highlights and limits, what method you want to use. It helps you evaluate them for every circumstance. You can use it again and again. The excellent news is it's actually available for free on the publisher's website. So if you visit newharbinger.com and you search for Beyond the Bipolar Label and click on Download Free Tools, you'll need a free account. But this resource will be there for you to use as many times as you like in every situation. So that's a gift that I hope you will enjoy. I hope you use it and you benefit from it. There's much, much more about disclosure in this chapter, but I think that's about all we have time for today. If you are dealing with self-stigma, I really do hope you'll consider buying Beyond the Bipolar label and work towards the healing and the self-love that you deserve. I'd like to leave you with this paragraph from chapter 6. Were you thinking I should have bookmarked these before I started talking, huh? That's okay. Okay. Talking about your bipolar can actually decrease your self-stigma. When you share your story, you build confidence in who you are as a person who just happens to have bipolar. Bipolar becomes less of a terrifying focal point and more a casual thing you can drop into conversation when you would like. So thank you so much for listening. I'm Dr. Andrea Vasilev. Please reach out to me, andreavasilev.com, or on Instagram at best.life.bipolar. Have a beautiful day.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time out of your day to do this for us. We're really excited for this book to come out. I think it's a really great
Thank
resource. Definitely makes it super simple for people to understand. And I think it's just, something that everybody struggles with, but especially with bipolar, there's not enough easy ways to look at it and to
Right.
really hone in on who you want to tell. And I just love how you broke it up and everything. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
I
I
think
hope
it'll
it
be
is
really,
genuinely helpful to people.
I'm sure it will be. I'm definitely very excited for it. So yeah, thank you so much everybody for joining us. We will definitely be very excited for this to come out. And until next time, thank you and have a good day.
Bye.
All right.